Hey Scott, hi.
Hey, David.
How are you? Let me just get this zoomed in. I'll get this out. Let's get closer. Voila, voila. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Really well. Can't complain. Can't complain. Yeah.
That's,
Thank you for an entertaining judging.
oh, was it? Okay. I mean, obviously I wasn't there for it, but
Yeah, no, it was very nice for me to invite Sean and Sumaya, who are very interested in what's happening in the US. So wonderful to have them, and their sort of high level of design sort of appreciation, see what's happening on the ground, and they actually really appreciated it very much.
okay, well, that's terrific. We're glad to get such an array of inputs, and perspectives on it. So thanks for putting together such a good team.
Thank you.
The, so yeah, we'll try to be quick here. I know you're busy,
Oh,
man.
yeah, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry.
The I wanted to start just by talking in general about
Mhm.
your perceptions of architecture, where it's going, either on a philosophical level or just right down to business basics, and so
Yeah.
your
Well, our
firm's
industry
been
is
through a lot of growth and change. So how's it going for you?
no, Adjaye Associates is great. We are, we're three sort of continental offices strong. We are in the US with our New York office and Europe with our London office and in Africa with our Accra office. And we're doing a lot of work in the Middle East. So there probably will be a fourth office very soon because we're doing a lot of work in that region. So we are growing and very happy, but we have very specific type of work that we do, and it's not, our practice is not the kind of local market kind of practice. We pursue certain topologies that makes us move around the world looking for those topologies in emerging markets or in places where those clients might be. So we have quite a sort of specific model for how I like to make architecture. But it's wonderful to be, in the US and to see the way in which the landscape of architecture is evolving. My interest specifically is in the civic nature of architecture, of course. So I'm always curious to see how, what trends are being picked up by more sort of mainstream firms, and what sensitivities are starting to percolate into, the delivery, the offices that deliver the infrastructure that deeply affect people's lives, in a very everyday way. So that was
Absolutely.
great. Yeah.
What are you seeing in general in trends?
Yeah, I think that there's a high level of design. I think that design is clearly, I think you can see that there's a desire to, I think that there's a kind of desire to create aesthetics in architecture right now, which I think is really interesting. I mean, I don't know if you know what I mean by that. I know you know what I mean by that, but there's a sense of trying to show that architecture is aesthetic and it is visual, it is pleasant, it's enlivening, it edifies. And I think that that is a very, very nice quality. It's moved past just being functional or solving problems, but it is giving delight. You can definitely see that in the work that's starting to appear. There's much more range in the references, which I think is also interesting.
That's
So,
important in the world, isn't it?
yeah, it's not just, or trying to make a certain kind of version of architecture. I saw a lot more range, a lot more references. And even when budgets were tight, there's a sort of a desire to really to bring other things into it. And I think that that's very healthy for the profession, that it's not singular, but it's polyphonous and it's sort of way in which it references things. I think it's just a richer culture. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So, what do you think what's your prognostication for the next steps? Like what's our upcoming challenges or
I think that we have real challenges on the horizon. I talk to my teams all the time that I really believe the profession is at a precipice, to be really honest. I think that we are at a stage where we systematically have to grapple with two major issues. One, the democratization of design through machine learning systems, and the availability of tools which have been the sort of sacred, things of our profession are becoming normalized and being delivered into the construction industry and to lay people. So I think defining how we offer a service and what that service is becomes even more, we have to retool that. Everything that's becoming a real issue. Learning models are going to streamline lots of things that we used to bill for and things like that. It's going to shift our way of thinking. So there's one, which is the nature of practice. I think the internet did one sort of a big shakeup about how we draw and document. And I think this new system is going to shift the way in which we work and what our agency is. And I think anyone that underestimates that is going to be left behind, because I think it's going to happen very quickly, personally, from what I can see. And then I think the second thing is really supporting the construction industry to decarbonize and to move towards a sort of world where we are more and more interested in life cycles. We're more and more interested in energy output. We're more and more interested in, the net positive or the net negative of a building in terms of the metrics that we are now having in terms of tools to measure these things. We can now measure the carbon in buildings. This is a seismic change, and those days where you could just, it's like, I think it brings us sort of huge responsibility. And I think it's a good responsibility. I think it makes us much more accountable. But I think that that's going to start to become some base foundations for what our business is also judged on and how we deliver success and value.
And maybe as part of the answer to your first problem of how do we maintain our value when our secret sauce has been spilled at the table.
Exactly. And it really has. I mean, at Adjaye Associates, we're looking at all the AI models and what they can do. And it's quite impressive. Yeah.
So I would have thought that firms whose work is maybe, let's call it, more predictable, would be the ones that would suffer most directly from that. But you're seeing it even as a risk to you, your firm, and jobs that are in a different position.
Different position. So I have no sense of threat from an AI model out designing me or being a better designer in any way. So because in a way, what we do is we define new parameters and go into new solutions. And I think the AIs that are being developed are about precedent and knowledge-based systems that solve problems based on precedent. So we're not in that, we don't have an agentic AI world yet. So maybe that will be a future thing and we'll see what that is. But I think that's quite far away. But what we do have is, I think that the scale of offices will drastically reduce because we have the AIs that are on the market right now mean that we don't need to worry about, specification documents, cross-read checking and referencing things that take a long time, the ability to reuse details and upgrade them and do things. All these sort of what I call deep infrastructure of our craft will become systematized and very augmented in a very efficient way. So I think it'll affect how we price our work, and there's more value now on what you deliver in terms of site and what you deliver in terms of concept and idea and the innovation that you bring to a project, and less so about how you articulate the mainstream, because these machine learning systems are going to be able to deliver that quality.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's good. Good broad comments there.
I hope it's not too wide, but I mean, it's the real issues I'm dealing with. So I'm generously sharing.
Yeah. How did you go about selecting this jury after we came?
Yeah. So I really thank you for asking. And I really enjoyed the opportunity of sharing to different voices. I want different voices. I think one of the things we do as we mature in the business and we become sort of senior people in the business is that we allow insights for emerging generations to be able to understand some of the real issues, because they don't change. There are fundamentals, there's delivery of work, there's different topologies. That is the business of our work. But young emerging firms, are always spending such a long time inventing new topologies and trying to think about changing the world, that actually it's really great for them to just see the business of how architecture actually is affecting people's lives and doing things. So, I've been a long time supporter of Sumaya Valley. I was part of the jury that chose her for the Serpentine Pavilion, which sort of launched her career. So she's somebody I sort of mentor, and she's a very academic, intellectual architect, but really coming into commissions. So I wanted her to really understand and bring her thinking, about a sort of way in which the world and equity and value, she believes in that as a kind of model of architecture. And so to have her mind and her critical thinking bear on everyday work was, I think, really important. And I think Sean Canty is one of the kind of really beautiful poetic voices emerging in the American landscape from his generation. Incredibly sensitive and poetic designer from the African-American community, and a real talent, and somebody I've also, supported and I think is very, very special. And, he's more of a teacher and doing installation. He's at that beginning stage of installation, small scale projects. So again, to see what happens was very important to be able to give him that opportunity. And then obviously Joe Franchina is one of the senior directors in my studio, my New York studio. And he's a very experienced set of hands. He's really been with me for nearly 30 years. So I wanted, as somebody who is kind of a right-hand man, person for me, to also really bring our experience and what we've been doing to bear on the sort of portfolio that we were seeing. So that's how I chose it. That's like a bit of this, a bit of that, a bit of this. Yeah.
Joe obviously brings some really in the weeds, how to get projects done.
He's the American context. He knows about American projects. So he was able to talk to these young architects about what it takes to deliver these things, how these, what are some of the issues that don't seem obvious, that are challenging in terms of code, or all these are issues that may have been solved. And I think he was very, very instrumental for them in terms of understanding beyond the pictures, what it takes to make these kinds of buildings.
And just real quickly, do you mind describing the process you went through and how you kind of came to your decisions?
Yeah, no, we went through a process of going collectively through. First, we all had a sort of dry run of the projects and ranked the ones that we liked, but we kept that to ourselves. And then we came together and we broke the projects into the topologies, the different types. And then we ran through how we had scored privately each of those typologies. And then we actually discussed all the projects all over again and wanted to see if there was still consensus. After hearing everybody's comments, everybody, all of us commented on why we thought something was. And it allowed for a very lively discussion to unveil, maybe things that weren't obvious, or to also hear different sort of insights that hadn't become consensual. So, I wanted that to resonate, and we had very fruitful discussions, which were very enjoyable for everyone. So grateful. It's an incredible amount of hard work to put together, that it's also money, it's expensive. So, we wanted to be very respectful of everyone's time and the efforts they put in. So we discussed every single project, and then we ranked it again, and we did it very much with a kind of show of hands about, support, not support, or category, and we just ranked through until we got to the winners. And that was very exciting. And then, and then reflecting back on, the special mentions and all the other things that were sort of put in, we ranked those after we'd got the core sort of winners.
Perfect. I think my final question would be, what are your suggestions for next year's flock of candidates?
I think it's I just think that it was very nice to see sometimes some very modest projects, but that were very inventive. I think adaptive reuse and invention and adaptive reuse is definitely a very important category to take very seriously. It's a side of architecture that I think is becoming more and more important. So seeing more adaptive reuse will be really exciting, and for people to not feel that it's just about object buildings or new buildings, but to feel like this idea of the circular life of architecture is a big topic, so encourage that to come in. Small projects are encouraged. I'd like to see more small projects, modest projects, because I don't think it's always, a big project doesn't necessarily mean more skill or more capability. So it's also nice to be able to do that. But then with the bigger projects, it's wonderful to see the uptake of, really important values coming through. So again, values projects are really to be encouraged. It doesn't matter if you didn't have the high budget, but if you had values that were really, that guided the project and gave more to the project beyond just the financial muscle, I think that you should put in it and tell us about that, because architecture has become much wider now.
That's great.
Thank you so much, Scott.
Any other thoughts? Otherwise,
It's just wonderful to talk to you, wonderful to see you, and thank you for the opportunity. It's really great.